And Governor Youngkin has done a remarkable job of leading, along with Governor Abbott, the federal state coordinating subcommittee. And Governor Abbott, I remind everyone, governors have day jobs, and he has taken his time away from the vast duties of the governors of the state of Virginia to be with us today. So Governor Youngkin, thank you for your report.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Governor Bryan, for your leadership. Governor Stitt, thank you for hosting and welcoming everybody to Oklahoma. And I particularly appreciate your comments around the Oklahoma standard. And I do firmly believe that the standard that exists in our emergency response personnel is exactly that. A standard to run to danger when others run away, a standard to put others' interests ahead of their own, a standard to recognize that first order of business is saving lives. And that is a standard that not just reflects Oklahoma's character, but I think it reflects the character of the entire country. So Governor Stitt, once again, I deeply appreciate your comments. And I also appreciate your input. One of the big aspects of the work that the state and local response subcommittee has undertaken is to listen. And I want to say also that the coordination, the state and federal coordination subcommittee, which is the other subcommittee, and our subcommittee have been working arm in arm because we find ourselves benefiting from each other's interactions. And the extensive effort to listen, the extensive effort to engage, and to not just hear complaints, but more importantly, recommendations and solutions, I think has been one of the foundations of the work that the entire FEMA Review Council has undertaken. And I think that speaks to the value of this work. I want to thank President Trump for putting us together and charging us with this great opportunity and enabling us to get this work done. Secretary Noem and Secretary Hegseth, thank you for your leadership. And I also appreciate your personal engagement. I've had conversations late at night and early in the morning. And so thank you. And I particularly want to thank our members of this committee, particularly Governor Abbott, who I, of course, have so deeply appreciated your leadership and NIM's leadership in Texas. But I also just appreciate the fact that the experience base that you bring to this effort is really unparalleled. And then, of course, Mayor Castor and Sheriff Rosie, thank you. We'll get to some of the summary comments in a minute. And I just want to alert both of you. I'll be handing you the baton here in a minute for a few comments. Let me just begin with the basic objective that we have had so far. And that is to recognize that engaging and listening with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial leadership, first responders, legislators, users, nonprofits has been critically important. And the survey that we undertook, which, as Governor Bryant, you shared, over 1,300 respondents from all 50 states, from 6 tribes, 1 territory, 83,000 questions that were answered that covered the 32 core capabilities that are outlined for FEMA. How should these capabilities be best rendered at the local level or at the federal level? How should we think about the standards for those capabilities? How should we think about collaboration? How should we think about, yes, the funding? And the response was overwhelming. And that overwhelming response, I think, has led to 5 key takeaways. And again, the support from Secretary Noem, your team, and particularly the dedicated folks who have helped us sift through this extensive response and really identify 5 key themes that I want to share with everyone. I do believe that as you hear the themes that come from the efforts from this committee, you will hear great consistency that once again underpins our collective affirmation that FEMA needs to be transformed, and yet it can be transformed and it can fulfill its central mission to not only prepare, and not only to mitigate, but to respond and support Americans in the face of some of the most horrific disasters. So the 5 big themes that came out of our work, and again, these are the survey recipients' responses categorized into 5 themes. The first is to accelerate federal funding to the communities. Very simply, to modernize and streamline the process of funding direct assistance. And I'm going to use that word again, direct assistance, not assistance that is migrating through a myriad of bureaucratic processes, but support the states and local capabilities with emergency response funding quickly, so they know what they're getting and they understand that they can put it to use in order to save lives and commence immediate recovery. This was the overwhelming #1 response. I think we heard it from Governor Stitt as well. Second is to empower local and regional readiness. This again is a shifting of the leadership of the response to states and local authorities. I know as a governor that when we know a disaster is coming in preparation for a hurricane or a major storm, we get ready and we go to work by deploying the resources that we know we have access to. It is that sentiment to empower us to do that and to have the federal government play a support role, but not a lead role in that effort. Again, the theme here has been consistent. I think this is underpinned by strong recommendations to strengthen the mutual aid system. EMAC works incredibly well. It could be so much better. And I think you'll hear even more on those lines from the State Federal Coordination Subcommittee. Third big theme is to make sure that we are protecting and evolving the national lifeline capabilities. And what do we mean by that? The capabilities that you just heard from Texas Task Force 1, the capabilities that we have in the Commonwealth of Virginia with 2 urban search and rescue teams that are set to national standards so that when they are called upon, those that are receiving the help know exactly what they're going to get. This again will overlap with some of the great recommendations that are evolving out of the State and Federal Coordination Subcommittee. The fourth big theme deals with our more rural communities. And as a governor of a state that saw Hurricane Helene devastate Southwest Virginia, devastate it because, of course, there was a tremendous storm that hit. And yet we were able to mobilize tremendous resources ahead of the storm in order to protect lives and begin the recovery process. But rural communities oftentimes find themselves less prepared, less equipped, and therefore less capable to deal with emergencies versus urban centers. And that is one consistent theme from those communities, which is how do we use regional capability buildup? How do we use the reassignment of response capabilities into states and regional areas to make sure that Southwest Virginia, Eastern Tennessee, West Virginia, and of course, Western North Carolina will have the kinds of response capabilities that we collectively need. Again, the EMAC system works incredibly well, but it can work even better. And then fifth, and I think you've already heard some of these themes, is to unite the nation's resilience network. And oftentimes we forget, as Governor Stitt reminded us, that the capabilities within the nonprofit community, the capabilities within the private sector to respond quickly, to bring philanthropic support, and to get moving, particularly in the recovery effort, oftentimes are inhibited, if not sometimes prevented, by government bureaucracy. And therefore, the nation's resilience network is comprised of, yes, federal agencies, and yes, state and local and tribal and territorial capabilities, 501c3 nonprofits. But we need to link it together and make sure that we are coordinated in using it, as opposed to suboptimizing the response. These 5 big themes of the objectives that we should have are underpinned by numerous very specific recommendations. And I think as we move into, over the course of the next months, the final report writing, Governor Bryant, and I deeply appreciate your leadership here, that we can incorporate the work of the 2 subcommittees and, of course, the overall FEMA Review Council efforts, in addition to the continued collaboration at federal, state, and local levels to translate these great suggestions, recommendations into actionable answers. That is my optimistic view of where we can get to based on the tremendous feedback that we've had to date. And Mayor Castro, I'm coming to you in 2 minutes. But I do think that our effort continues to listen. And therefore, the listening sessions that are scheduled in North Carolina and also in Puerto Rico, along with the continued input that I know we're all receiving, remains critically important. Governor, that's the high-level summary of the work that we've done to date. Again, I want to thank the over 1,300 respondents, but also the so many participants in the listening sessions that have taken place. And with that, Mayor Castro, I'm going to pass it over to you